have started harassing the player, have started calling him out, have started booing him on the pitch and everything to express their dissatisfaction with him wanting to go to a rival club. And in a situation like this, the player, according to reports, have not been able to go to the training grounds for 2 days now. Apparently, the reason is that he's experiencing stomach upset. One of my presentations, I was talking about some of the biosocial and then biological impacts of stress and anxiety. And one of them was digestive issues. Either you are getting constipated or you are getting diarrhea. And that could be as a result of experiencing stress. So I'm not too sure about the exact diagnosis of the player, but if it is possible that it could be because of what he's going through, it can contribute to the stomach discomfort he's experiencing, if that is true, right? And so the digital scrutiny further enhances any mental health challenge a player might be experiencing when they go through a process like that. It is not only limited to players, because like I said, today we are having a conversation concerning both players and fans. What also happens to fans is what we call neural mirroring, right? It's the brain's mirror networks activate when watching plays. It makes fans experience real physiological tension, dopamine rushes, and physical distress as if they are on the pitch. Because of the nature of football and the way a group of people support it, the kind of identification that we apply to it, you hear people talking about we won, we lost. So they have kind of drowned their personality into the personality of the group, and they mirroring each other. So if there is a lot of excitement, it affects them. If there is a lot of depression, it affects them. So when you are going through watching a very passionate football game and you're a very passionate fan, you experience neural mirroring, where everybody's emotion is easily transposed onto you. You start exhibiting the same reactions that sometimes even the players on the pitch are going through. So you experience the same dopamine rushes, excitement, depression, sadness, anger, physical distress when your team is losing, or when the opponent is making fun of you, or you think there are decisions that will be taken on the field that are unfair. So you start directing your anger towards the officials. All these things happen to fans, whether they are on the field itself or they are watching it from their homes. So far as they identify themselves with the teams or the groups that are playing, or even individual players, they experience neural mirroring that takes them through the whole cocktail of physiological tension, dopamine rushes, physical distress, to the point where there have been cases where some people have had cardiac arrest or have gone into coma simply because of neural mirroring, how they responded or connected to the emotional cocktail that was flowing when their teams were playing. Okay. The second reason why a lot of people experience these things is what we call the collective effervescence. Now, collective effervescence is where there is a shared sacred symbols and rituals. So you realize that we are wearing. If you take a look at my slide, you see Ghana there, you see South Africa there. You are wearing the same jerseys. You have painted your faces. You are holding paraphernalia. Paraphernalia. You are holding flags. You are blowing trumpets and you are blowing whistles. Because of those shared symbols, and sometimes the fans are singing, they are moving in a certain way, they are dancing in a certain way. The shared chanting and stadium atmosphere creates a rapid emotional contagion, right? So it's just like how a mob reacts. You realize that the loudest, angriest person in the mob easily starts influencing everybody else. And by the time you realize everybody is angry and loud, and sometimes they cannot even understand how it happened, right? Because the emotions become like an infectious disease. It becomes like flu or COVID, where it starts affecting everybody within that space, right? It amplifies your feelings. So if you have somebody who is not a loud person, because of collective effervescence, you can become very loud. If you're not somebody, you are somebody who is not really out and out. If you're amongst people who are experiencing or demonstrating that particular emotion, it's easy for you to become contaminated, and then you start amplifying your own feelings and you start joining them. So if there's a feelings of triumph, you are shouting, you are dancing with the people, not because sometimes even if you were by yourself, you couldn't be able to, but because you're amongst people, you have been infected by the emotional contagion. And if there is heartbreak or disappointment or depression or sadness, that one is also it's also expanded exponentially because of the collective effervescence, right? You are sharing symbols and rituals, and so you start sharing emotions too, and that is how normally it happens. The third one is what we call the in-group fusion, where you lose your ego or your individual identity uh, and then take on the group's identity, right? It's a deep identification that blurs the boundary between personal self and team identity, treating club match outcomes as direct personal validation or threat. So you realize that those of us who are big fans of clubs, and just recently, I mean, the people who were supporting their national teams, individuals lose their sense of self and they take on the identity of the team or the identity of the club to the point where we experience deep sadness and disappointment when the club loses, and we experience excitement when the club wins, even though most of us will never go into the club stadium, will never meet the players personally, and the club doesn't even know you exist. But because of in-group fusion, we have adapted and taken on these identity and characters to the point where we lose ourselves within the team's identity. So people start referring to themselves as the club, you know. And so when we are arguing and talking, we are like, oh, we bought these players. Sometimes I catch myself, I'm like, oh, I didn't even contribute. I have not even contributed a cedi to the club's purchases of players. But I say, oh, we bought this. Why are we not buying this? Why are we not doing this? And it's sometimes interesting because you don't even realize that you have lost your own self and individual identity, and you have taken on that of the club. Some people wear jerseys. They identify themselves as diehard fans, and to the point where people are willing to sacrifice themselves, their comforts, even their lives for these groups, although they might not have direct contact or access to them. And this is because of a phenomenon we call in-group fusion. So what does these things bring? All right. How do these things affect us? We've already spoken about how it affects players. Now, I want to talk about how these things affect fans themselves. So, when we watch knockout matches or penalty shootouts, the things that happen are we have elevated supporter cortisol levels and then a triggering in blood pressure, right? So there are about 45% increase in your cortisol levels when you experience the phenomena I'm talking about, the in-group fusion, the shared effervescence, and all those things. When you are watching a tense match or even a penalty shootout, there is a 45% in your cortisol level. Cortisol is the neurochemical that signifies the presence of stress, right? It's in addition to adrenaline. So you realize that almost half of the amount of cortisol in your system comes up. That is increasing by almost half, 50%, when you are watching such tensed um, encounters, which means that you are actually experiencing the process as if you are the one engaged in it, right? You are going through the whole physiological changes players on the field are experiencing simply by watching it, right? Because of all the things that I've already mentioned. There's also a high, for those who highly identify themselves as supporters, defeat triggers genuine grief cycle. So when you experience real personal tragedy, right, we have the cycles of grief, which is like because you've experienced a personal loss. But if you identify yourself very, very strongly with a football team or a club or anybody who is playing a football match, so the research indicates that you experience genuine grief cycles as if you are the one who have experienced a grief, or as if you've lost somebody, or at least you have experienced a tragedy. That's how deep it is. Right? People sink so much into that emotion that they experience real, genuine grief cycles. So if we did a brain scan of somebody who has lost a partner and the grief they're experiencing, and we did a brain scan of somebody whose team has lost a match, it is almost comparable, and that is really, really serious. All right. Then, of course, if you have elevated cortisol, if you're experiencing grief cycles, although you have not directly experienced trauma, so we call it, maybe we call it secondary grief, or vicarious grief, then you experience cardiovascular stress. So if you have any issues with your cardiovascular system and you keep exposing yourself to these spikes in cortisol level and the spikes in blood pressure, it means that you are gradually taking yourself onto a very bad health depreciation or retrogression, where your health is directly affected because of your consistent movement through the grief cycle and the sharp spiking of your cortisol level. And of course, we know how that also leads to temporary daily productivity. Those who have lived in Kumasi before, if Kotoko plays a match and Kotoko loses, the research indicates that if they lose on a Sunday, from Monday to Wednesday, most market people will report low profit because people don't feel energized or engaged to even buy stuff. The opposite also happens. If Kotoko wins a match, almost everybody does well in the following week because people are excited and they are buying. And so it means that it's not just personal consequences, it also has economic consequences. And we see that with how the government focuses on funding sports, because we know that there is economic benefit to good sports outcomes. So if the Ghana national team plays well, the citizens are excited, they spend more, they invest more, and business people get more money. If we don't do well, the opposite happens. And so that is the kind of impact football has on us as individuals, our personal lives, and our economic life, and even our political lives. Because we know in the history of politics in Ghana that there's a time that people have actually voted for political parties because of their commitment to sports in the country. So that is also very interesting. All right. So let's go to the meat. How do we make sure that our support for football, whether you're a player or whether you're a fan, how do we make sure that it does not negatively affect our lives? Because I remember when Estella called me and he was talking about this topic, he made mention of the young lady who unfortunately lost her life because she was too excited after Ghana's first match. I think, is it Ghana's second match or first match? Second match. So how do we make sure that we enjoy the sport, we identify with our clubs, we celebrate without the negative impact, especially on our lives, on our health, and on our businesses and our productivity? The first thing that I would like us to consider is what we call the cognitive reframing. These big words, cognitive reframing, is largely challenging thoughts that come to your mind as a result of a negative emotion. So, for example, you support a football club, your club has lost a match, and then because of what I call the impersonification and the effervescence, you have lost yourself within the club, within the group, and so you're experiencing depression. If you're a player, you are associating the loss or the drop in form to your whole identity. Now, that thought in your mind is creating the emotion that you don't like, the emotion of anger, the emotion of sadness, the emotion of depression. So, cognitive reframing is asking you to challenge that thought. Because in mental health, we know that emotions are birthed from thoughts. It's what you are thinking that generates the emotion you are feeling, right? And so, if you are able to readdress the thought that is producing the emotion, then you can stop it. So, cognitive reframing is challenging the thoughts. Why is it that one performance out of several is making me think that I'm not worth anything, right? Why is it that my team that is playing 36 matches in the league has lost one match and I think that that's the end of the world? Why is it that one World Cup that the team can only play about 7 matches that we have lost and we are coming home? Why is it that I feel so down and depressed? How does this affect my personal identity? If I'm a fan of this sports team and they have lost, why do I think that everybody will know that my team have lost? Why is that so important? You have to question those thoughts, right? And then when you are able to question those thoughts, then you are able to diffuse the emotion that is attached to the thought. Now, I'm not going to be naive and say that it's going to be easy because, like I told you, football is old. The impact is huge. The kind of emotion it ignites in us is overwhelming. And so sometimes you might not think that you'll be able to even question the thought that is passing through your mind. But you have to be very, very aware of it. Let me give myself as an example. In 2022, I really suffered. I was such a big fan of Ghana. I was following all our matches. Even the one that we won, it caused me a lot of stress and distress because I was always on center hooks. I was palpitating. The Ghanaian team was disappointing me. Although we are leading by scores. Those who are in sports, you know what happened in 2022 in Qatar. So I decided that, look, I'm going to do cognitive reframing this time around. I'm not going to allow it to get to me as much as it got to me. To the point people were thinking that I have not become patriotic. But I said, look, I'm trying to protect my mental health because I realized that I knew myself and I knew how passionate I was about the football and the soccer. If I got into it too much, I was going to have negative repercussions. And so I did a lot of cognitive reframing. And so for me, this time around, it was easier to handle the losses that we experienced because I had prepared and planned for it. So it is not going to be easy to start immediately, whether you're a player or a fan or even a manager. But if you recognize the fact that sometimes the immediate temporary process you are going through sound and feel as if it's permanent, it sounds and feel as if it is so huge and large, but it isn't, right? And so cognitive reframing helps us to be able to resituate our mindset in line with what we are experiencing at the moment and recognize that it is not as big as we think it is, and we shouldn't allow it to have that much impact on us as it is having it. The next one is the digital boundaries and the digital cool down. When it comes to digital boundaries, I'm very passionate about it. Recently, I've been doing a lot of education on digital detoxing. The kind of thing that has happened to us as a civilization, as a species, is devastating. About 2 days ago, I wrote an article on LinkedIn, and I was talking about the research that indicates that since 2004, the launch of Facebook, human beings have lost, I think, close to 60% of our focusing ability. It means that if we're able to focus maybe 5 minutes uninterrupted in 2004, right now we are only able to do it in 2 minutes. After 2 minutes, we can't hold our focus again, and then we seem bored and look for other things to attract our attention. And that is devastating, that is dangerous. If you have realized that some people, so the research also states that the average person touches their phone 250 times a day. That is serious. Imagine 250 times a day, right? and and that is crazy. And just yesterday, Meta had to settle with about 46 states in the US. They have been sued that they deliberately have hidden research that indicates that the algorithms of Meta platforms and YouTube were specifically designed to create addiction in people, especially teenagers. And because they knew they were going to lose, they had to settle 18 billion and then introduce a lot of changes that they have decided to set up. I'll give the link if anybody needs it to go and check my article on LinkedIn, and then you will see that they are introducing a lot of changes. But this is to let you know that the more digitally aware you are, the more dangerous it's that you are going to have your emotions deliberately set up in a way you don't want, because the platforms are designed to cause you to become addicted. And so if you're a player and then you are having challenges in your club, if you're a fan and you are not enjoying the performance of your team, and then you don't establish the digital boundaries, it's going to be worse. Because you see, your team will lose on Sunday, and you think you have dealt with the grief, but Monday morning, the sports analysis will make it worse for you. The fans of other clubs that are your rivals will start posting and making jokes and making fun of you on the digital platforms, and that will just continue. It will just repeat your grief, and then it's like you keep being re-hit re-hit, you keep being re-traumatized, and that is dangerous. And so you have to have a lot of digital boundaries. You need to have um, boundaries around your digital interactions as to reduce the occurrence of your trauma, right? That is very, very important. And the digital cool down is when um, I do this a lot. When my team loses the weekend, I make sure I don't listen to any sports program in the entire week. Sometimes I'm able to do it, sometimes I'm not. But you realize that the more you listen to these sports programs, the more you listen, you follow all these online accounts and stuff, the worse it becomes for you. So you realize that you keep being traumatized because they keep making fun of the performance and everything. So a digital cool down is important. If you're a player, the week after your sports game, don't go online. If you're a fan, try as much as possible to reduce your digital interactions, especially when the performance was really bad. Other than that, you keep getting re-traumatized. It's just like if you experience a breakup in your relationship and, sorry, for the next 1 month, you are always around the friends group of the partner that you are broken up with. It's going to get worse, right? So you need space. You need time to cool down, and that is also important. I'm also working on a book I call the Digital Detox. So maybe when it's ready, I'll reach out to Estella. It's a great. I'm putting together a lot of things that we can do to be able to, but that is beside the point. Let's move on. Social support. Social support. You know, when you are a fan of football and your team loses or performing badly, sometimes you get lost in this bubble that everybody watched the game or everybody likes football as much as you do. But that's not true. When you go out, you realize that some people are completely unaware of the stress and the struggle you are going through. And sometimes it surprises me. I go into the clinic and the nurses there have no idea the kind of grief I am in because they don't watch football, right? Some of my clients don't understand why you should be sad. They don't watch football. They're not football fans, right? And so a good social support means that when you are experiencing problems here, you can go to a place where you'll be accepted, not based on the performance of your club, but just based on the person you are, right? It's both for fans and for the players themselves. You need a support system that gives you the kind of emotional pickups that you need when you are going through the grief that comes with being part of the football fraternity. And so social support is very, very critical. It's fundamental. The next one is that you have to re-anchor hobbies, right? You have to have other things that you can do to take your mind off the disappointment and the stress and the cortisol high spike. You need other things, right? For me, what works is reading, watching anime, listening to music, and watching comedy. So when it's really bad for me, I recall uh, last year, my team, and those who are football fans, my team is Barcelona. So last year, when we lost out to Atletico Madrid in the Champions League qualification, I was devastated. And I just went to find my Chinese donghua and then my Japanese anime, and I just binged. I enjoyed. I don't know if anybody is a fan of anime or donghua here, but I was watching Swallow Star, Renegade Immortal, Perfect World, Battle Through the Heavens, and it just took my mind off it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed music. I love Kojo Ntwi songs. I also watch comedy just to take my mind off, right? So I had to introduce other things to allow me to be able to deflate the mood I was in, and then that brought my cortisol levels low. I was able to relax, and then I didn't go into any depressive episodes. So that also helps. And then one of the most important things for me, and I think it's also one of the reasons why so many people have such hyped impact when their sports teams get a problem is the stakes are too high. It's not just the game that they have lost. Some of them have betted their entire monies. Some of them have taken a death, right? They have dared each other on who is going to win or something like that, and that increases the risk. If that happens, it means that you are experiencing a lot more loss than just losing the game, right? You are losing money, you are losing reputation, You are probably even losing freedom and access or even integrity. And that makes it worse for you, right? So, unfortunately, betting has been accepted as in our society. Um, we don't regulate them anymore. They are able to talk about betting freely on radio, unchecked. We don't even check to see if their audience are 18 plus. We just write it there and say gambling can be addictive, but we don't pay much attention to it. And we've even changed the names of the people who engage in betting and gambling to make it sound better. They call themselves investors, right? Now, if you're not a bettor or a gambler or an investor, then there's no conscience that pricks you that you are putting yourself up for danger. And so, because we bet, we gamble, the impact is elevated, it's escalated, right? And so, if you don't reduce the stakes that attach to football, you are going to have a high or a worse reaction to a loss or even a win than necessary. And that is also going to affect your mental health. So we need to tackle betting and gambling in Ghana. We really need to set up because, in my opinion, it's one of the most dangerous public health issues that we are not managing. And we can get to a point where it's going to be really, really problematic. And so that is also something that we need to do. If you reduce the stakes, it means that you are not that much invested in it, and you are able to kind of reach emotional equilibrium quicker when there is a loss or even when there is a win. Okay, all right. So I realize that I'm talking too much. And so thank God the presentation is ended. So thank you very much for your time. I hope I've been able to give you what you need to understand the concept of how much football influences our mental health and what we can do to enjoy the game, instead of having consequences that are negative when something happens within our fans or our support. I would like us to really, really get into it. So please ask questions, give contributions. Let us discuss it like what we would do maybe after a Champions League match or after a World Cup match. And so that we can, share ideas and then be able to pick up a lot of skills to help us to navigate this upcoming football season that is starting so exciting. I mean, the weekend when Manchester United lost, I had friends calling to me and said, Doc, Charlie, I'm struggling. My team has lost. I'm saying, look, remember, it is just one match out of several. Relax, do cognitive reframing, reduce the stakes, find other things to take your mind off it, and realize that look, the world has not ended because your club has lost a game. It's going to get better. So let us ask questions. Let us discuss with the time that we have. And thank you very much for having me. Estella.
Thank you so much, Doug. I think that the reason why I'm laughing is that you've given me a lot of flashbacks that I didn't want to have. I think that I was just remembering when I was in school way back then and I was supporting a team I would not mention. And then that day I wore my
Please mention it.
attack. It's interesting. The same team that
Estella, mention the thing.
it's Barcelona. And so I wore my attire, everything colored, went to the school where all the guys are, the big screen, and then that I think they scored them 6, and that was the end. I didn't go back to Barcelona again. So I think that it was just a flashback that I had that made me laugh, but it can really get to you. Like it was really, really heartbreaking for me. I think I see Victoria's hand up. Please,
Yes.
can you unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your
Good morning. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much. God
Good
richly
morning.
bless you. I'm so grateful. In fact, I'm going to recycle my brain again to watch football. I stopped watching football since 93 when Ghana had. Hello?
Please, we
Yeah.
can hear
Go on.
you.
Yeah, I stopped watching football since 1993 when
Wow.
Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire had their final match. And they scored Ghana. In fact, I was so down. And since that time, I've never watched football. In fact, when I see people watching football, I'll go and sleep. And when they finish, I'll come and ask for the results because I don't want to watch it. So thank you so much. And I'm now going to see if I can, because mentally it's very difficult to even see, look at, apart from even Africa football, the Western football too, I don't watch it. Because sometimes it's very painful when they score your group and you go through so many stress and pain. So I want to thank you so much. I'm now going to see whether I can recycle my brain and watch football. God richly bless you for the
You're
encouragement.
welcome, Vic. You're welcome, Vic. I understand how bad it can be. And so, yes, hopefully you'll be able to come back and enjoy the sport.
Thank you so much, Victoria, for adding your comment to that. I mean, it's interesting to know I mean, I thought it was Barcelona that did that to me, but I didn't know that others had also gone to such places. I think I see a question in the chat from Emmanuel. He's saying that this past 2 seasons as a Real Madrid fan has been very stressful. Okay, so I think that's his comment. Um, yes, yes. Yeah, but Doc, how can one really know that this is the extent? I remember that this last World Cup, I didn't know I could be a good coach. I was sitting down and I was just like, goodness, how do guys do it? Whenever these things are happening, how do you know that okay, at this point it's gotten too much? I need to take a break. Like the measures that you've given to us, how can you really check and know that okay, this is a normal phase of just being stressed about a football match result, and then you also know that this has gotten to an extent that I need to take these measures in place?
Yes, yes. That's a very good question. So you realize that I was talking about why the sports have that much impact on people. Because of all that is attached to it. All right. So the in-group fusion happens, the effervescence happens. So you realize that you are taking on too much emotion. You are a third party, but then because of your commitment to the outcome of the sport, you have now become a second party. It's like you are directly on the pitch. Now that should let you know that look, it's getting too much, especially when maybe you start. So personally, what I've noticed is that I start kind of attacking the players on the field. I start talking bad about them. It is to the point where you start insulting the players whilst you're at home, right? Now you realize that no, 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 I'm taking on too much. I'm losing too much of myself within the group. Okay. And so that is something you should recognize. And you can start detecting the signs of stress in your body, right? Your elevated heartbeat, you're palpitating, you are sweating, your mood is swinging and shifting too quickly, you are getting angry, you are getting depressed and sad. All these things should let you know that it is getting to a point where you are becoming too much of a party on the field instead of just a third party who is a fan. All these things should let you know that you are getting to that place, or the loss has already happened, and you realize that you have lost your appetite, you have lost the desire to talk to people. You have even become irritable to your partner, to your children, to your whoever it is that you are with. That is when you start realizing that no, I'm allowing this thing to get too far. Right? Some even get to the point where they start arguing and fighting with the fans of other clubs, right? Because these teams are in Europe, but you are in Ghana and you are fighting your neighbors, you are fighting your family members because of what somebody else is doing miles and oceans away, right? They are receiving large chunks of money every week, but you are fighting with your family and your children and your wife and your husband at home, okay? And so that should let you know that it is going too far. You are allowing these things to interrupt your normal life too much, and you need to quickly disconnect. You need to quickly start reframing your mindset, and you need to quickly shift your attention to something else so that you don't allow it to take over you and then you do things that you regret later. So you can start identifying and recognizing those things within yourself, and then you realize that no, this is getting too much. I'm becoming too vicariously involved in what is happening on the pitch.
Thank you so much, Doc, for that. I think we have just a few minutes to go, but I wanted to ask this last question. So it's in relation to the fans and then the footballers. For instance, maybe a footballer in a national team goes and play, and sometimes, like especially when it comes to penalties and all that, and somebody misses that,
Yeah.
and there's a way that when they come back home, there's this lashback. I mean, somebody may take a time off from social media, but for some of these footballers who are in the lead or who are very popular, how can they handle the lashback from their nation? And then for the fans also, what can they do to bypass just their emotions and also give a support to such footballers who are coming back home and they don't feel like they're disappointment and so forth?
Yes, that's also good. There is actually a precedent to that. I think it was a Colombian defender. He I think he scored an own goal, and I've forgotten his name, and he was shot when he got back to his country. Yes, I've forgotten the player's name. It's one of the saddest records in football history. He there was, I think it was a World Cup or something, and then he scored an own goal and he was killed. He was murdered when he got back to his country. And so yes, there are incidences like that where people escalate those issues. And it happens when you don't, like I said, you don't self-check and you allow these things, because like I mentioned, the experiences sometimes feel as if you are the one who has experienced it. So I'm pretty sure either this person had money on a bet, or the individual was so invested in the game, or he allowed the emotion to carry on to that point where he started harboring murderous intent towards the person who was just playing his game and made an honest mistake. Okay. So for fans, we need to consistently remind ourselves that this is somebody's job and there's a possibility of making a mistake. Nobody ever really wants to go on the pitch and not perform well. And sometimes, no matter how we feel or think, or even convince ourselves that some players are deliberately not playing well, most of the time it isn't true, right? And so we need to understand these things, because if the kind of scrutiny and blowback and attacks that football players experience is what every other field or every other professional experience, instead of, I don't know if we would have survived as a civilization. Imagine you are a business person, and for every loss you encounter, you have to face the entire nation. Every loss. Imagine you're a salesperson, and for every client you fail to be able to sell to, you start experiencing insults and attacks and threats. Imagine that. It's going to be very, very tough for you to maintain composure. And so, as fans, we need to consistently remind ourselves that that is also their job. They can make mistakes, and we need to understand that they are human. The other side for the players too, that also works. That is why most clubs now have psychologists. They allow them to be able to talk to these individuals so that they can disabuse their mind of their identity lost in their performance, like I mentioned earlier, that they are able to separate their job from their person, right? So that if they fail or they have a series of bad performances, they don't think it means they are bad people. So all those things are necessary. And that is why I think that psychology, sports psychology has had that much embrace, because people understand these things. But sports psychology almost always only work for the players. I think we also have to have fan psychology, where fans and supporters are also taking through these processes to understand that, look, you cannot lose yourself within the group all the time like that. It's not healthy. It's dangerous. It can be really, really dangerous for you. And so I think going forward, more education, more sensitization, and a conscious effort to educate ourselves that most players want the best for their clubs. And that when they feel, we shouldn't think that it's deliberate or that they don't feel it. They also feel it. And we should show empathy. Yes.
Thank you so much, Doc. We should show empathy to our footballers and really understand them. Thank you so much once again for sharing this knowledge with us. This has been our capacity building series, which is about football and how it's connected to mental health. And from what we've learned, we've gotten to know that football is not just a game. It comes with a lot of emotions and comes with a lot of things with our mind. And so as we are watching football throughout the year, we should ensure that, as Doc has taught us, we should put structures in place. We should know when we are going off and when we need to take a step back. We should know how to respect each other and show empathy at the end of the day. Thank you, everyone, also for joining us today for today's session. Please, there's a poll that is being launched right now. Please do all to rate the session. It helps us to know how we can improve this session. Also, this session is live on Mobile Web Ghana YouTube channel. So in case you want to rewatch and relearn, or you want to share it with a friend, someone in your family, in your friend circle who is a football diehard fan, you can just share this with them to help them to know how to take care of their mental health. And then this program is also brought to you by Mobile Web Ghana in partnership with the US Embassy Ghana American Corner. We are located at North Legon. You can come here on Mondays to Fridays and get access to free internet, get access to book collections we have here, get access to educational materials and amazing programs such as this that we are having here. So till we come your way again, please let's do have a great weekend ahead. And so let's also give a clap in the chat for Doc for taking us through today's session. All right, thank you all for joining. Thank you.
Thank you.